The battle for Kyrian had ended, but not in the way anyone expected. The skies were still scarred with smoke and wreckage. Half-burned ships drifted silently, their hulls cracked and glowing from battle. The Talari cities lay broken, their crystal towers shattered, their silver oceans dark with ash. Yet the people were alive. That in itself was a miracle, and the miracle had a name: humanity. When the first human ships appeared in orbit, many Talari believed they were only another enemy. Their sensors were damaged, their minds clouded with fear. But then the comm channels opened. "This is the Terran fleet," a voice had said. The tone was calm, steady, carrying no hint of conquest. "We received your signal. You are not alone. We will hold the line with you." The Talari had not believed at first. No one came when the other races called. No one dared stand against the Dominion. And yet the humans had not only come, they had fought. News of the clash spread like fire through hidden channels of the galaxy. Refugees whispered it first. Traders carried it further. And soon, in the darkest corners of conquered worlds, the rumor was spoken openly. The humans resisted. Some did not believe it. How could a young race barely past their own star system challenge the Dominion? It had to be false. Others argued it was a desperate lie made by broken species trying to cling to hope. But then the Dominion themselves confirmed it. In a cold broadcast sent across captured networks, the Karzul warlord declared, "The primitive race called humans has interfered. They will be crushed. Their homeworld will burn." The announcement that was meant to spread fear instead gave courage. Because if the Dominion felt the need to threaten, then the humans must have truly struck them. On Sirion, survivors gathered in the ruins. The Talari looked up at the human ships that remained, battered but unyielding. For the first time in years, the Talari sang. Their voices were soft and trembling, but filled with gratitude. They sang not because the war was over, but because someone had finally answered their cry. The human captains, listening on open channels, sat in silence. They did not fully understand the Talari's words, but they understood the meaning. Humanity had done something no other race had dared. They had chosen to fight for strangers. When the fleet returned to human space, they carried more than wounded soldiers and damaged ships. They carried a new reputation. The United Terran Council met again. Some leaders were furious. They argued that humanity had acted recklessly, that they had drawn the Dominion's attention too soon. "We are not ready for a war of this scale," one counselor warned. "We will bring destruction upon ourselves." But others spoke with pride. "We did not go looking for war," they said. "We went because no one else would. And now the galaxy knows we will not stand aside while others suffer." The debate raged, but one truth was clear. The humans had been noticed. They were no longer hidden in the quiet of their own systems. The Dominion now saw them as a threat, and so did the oppressed peoples of the galaxy. Far across space, in a secret meeting among refugee leaders, a quiet voice spoke. "The humans fight," said a Larash smuggler. His people had surrendered long ago, but he still carried bitterness in his heart. "They have no empire, no great fleets, and yet they struck the Dominion and lived." A Shenkar exile, her scales dull from hunger, nodded slowly. "They fight for others, not for conquest, not for glory. That is new. That is dangerous to the Dominion." Hope flickered, fragile but real. For the first time in a long age, broken civilizations began to wonder if they too could resist. The Karzul Dominion, however, was not impressed. In the warlord's chamber, the commander stood in silence as he paced. The great maps of the galaxy glowed on the walls with red marks spreading across countless systems. The humans' intervention was only a single scratch in that vast sea of conquest. "Do not be fooled," the warlord growled. "They are not powerful. They are reckless. They are like insects stinging a giant. Crush them and the others will remember their place." The commanders bowed, yet in their private thoughts some felt unease. The humans had done something unusual. They had forced the Dominion to delay. Even one delay was dangerous, still orders were clear. A new fleet would gather. The humans would be erased before their defiance could spread. Meanwhile, humanity prepared. In training fields on Mars, soldiers drilled with renewed energy. On the shipyards of Luna, engineers worked day and night to repair and build. Factories on Earth shifted their production from trade to defense. Humanity had tasted the fire of galactic war, and though they had bled, they had not broken. Ordinary people spoke of it too. In markets and homes, in crowded stations and quiet outposts, one phrase was repeated again and again. We stood when no one else did. For the first time, humanity felt they were not just defending themselves. They were defending the very idea that no race should be left alone in the dark. When the next message came, it was not from the Dominion. It came from beyond. A Valen scientist speaking through encrypted channels reached out to the Terran fleet. Her voice trembled as she said, We want to help. We cannot fight as you do, but we can share knowledge. We have seen your courage and we believe it matters. She was only the first. Soon others followed. Small groups, exiles and survivors, all reaching out with what little they had. And so humanity found themselves at the center of something larger than they had imagined. They had become a symbol. The Dominion still believed victory was theirs. Their fleets were massive, their weapons unmatched. They had centuries of conquest behind them. To them, humans were only a delay, an inconvenience. But the galaxy was watching. On hidden worlds and broken stations, whispers spread louder. The humans answered the call. They fight for us. They fight for all. And for the first time, the Dominion's enemies did not feel entirely alone. Humanity did not yet realize how deeply the galaxy's eyes had turned toward them. They only knew that more battles were coming. Their fleets would soon face greater storms, and their worlds would not be safe. But even as the threat grew, something stronger grew with it. An alliance not of power, but of hope. And it had begun with one choice. On one day when humanity heard a cry for help, and answered. The galaxy had seen golden ages before. Great empires had risen, built wonders across the stars, and then crumbled into dust. But never had the galaxy seen a storm as ruthless as the Karzul Dominion. They came from the dark edges of the Perseus Arm, a place no one dared to travel. Their fleets were endless, built from worlds that had been conquered long before anyone else knew they existed. The Dominion's ships were black and jagged, moving like blades through the stars. They did not ask for treaties. They did not offer peace. Wherever they went, they demanded surrender, and surrender always came. The Larash Confederacy, once proud merchants, bent their knee after their homeworld's defense grid was torn apart in a single day. The Valen Republic, known for their science, abandoned entire colonies to avoid extinction. Even the mighty Shenkar dynasty, whose fleets had guarded half the Orion Arm for centuries, fell after a war that lasted only 2 months. One by one, star systems flickered into silence. Planets that once held billions now burned or lay in chains. The galaxy watched in despair. None believed the Dominion could be stopped. Yet in this endless tide of conquest, one small beacon of hope remained. On the edge of the Orion Arm, hidden among quiet stars, lived a colony of the Talari, a gentle race known for their artistry. Their world Sirian was not rich nor powerful. Its oceans shone with silver light. Its mountains rose like crystal towers, and its people built cities that looked more like sculptures than machines. But beauty could not shield them. When the Karzul arrived, the Talari sent their plea for help into the stars. It was not a command nor a demand. It was a whisper of desperation, sent on every frequency they could. They knew no one would come. The Dominion had crushed all who tried to resist. Still, the Talari sent the call, because to do nothing would mean to die in silence. The Karzul warlord who commanded the fleet laughed when he heard the message. Let them cry. No one answers anymore. His ships descended on Sirion, ready to erase another name from the star charts. But far away, across thousands of light years, someone did hear. The human race was young by galactic measure. Their homeworld Earth had only touched the stars within the last few centuries. Unlike the great empires, humanity had no ancient dynasties, no vast fleets, no monuments carved across galaxies. To most, they were nothing more than newcomers, too small to matter, too ambitious to last. But there was something different about them. Humanity had grown not in peace, but in struggle. Their history was filled with survival against impossible odds. Storms, famines, conflicts, and challenges that would have broken weaker species. Where others surrendered, humans endured. Where others saw only defeat, humans searched for another path. It was this spirit that stirred when the Talari's distress call reached them. On Earth, in the chamber of the United Terran Council, leaders debated. The Talari were strangers. Their world lay far outside human borders. No treaty bound them, no alliance demanded help. Many argued to stay away. Why risk war with the Dominion? Humanity's fleets were not ready for such an enemy, but others argued with equal fire. If humanity turned away, then they would become no better than those who had watched the galaxy burn in silence. If humanity was to step into the stars, then they had to decide what kind of people they would be. After hours of debate, the Council reached a choice. Humanity would answer. The first ships to depart were not the largest. They were not the most advanced. They were a fleet of explorers, traders, and patrol vessels, hastily armed and organized. Yet they carried something more powerful than weapons. They carried determination. As they traveled, the crew spoke little, but their eyes burned with purpose. Some wondered aloud if they would ever return. Others joked nervously, hiding their fear. But all of them knew why they were there, because someone had to stand up when no one else would. The journey took weeks. The Dominion's shadow grew closer with every jump. Stories of new worlds falling reached the fleet. For some, doubt crept in. Could a young race like theirs truly make a difference against such power? But the answer came when the fleet reached orbit of Sarion. The planet burned. Karzul ships hung in the sky like vultures, their weapons raining fire on the silver oceans and crystal mountains. Cities crumbled into ruins. The Talari, peaceful and unarmed, scattered in panic. Their art, their songs, their beauty, all were being erased. Yet even as the Dominion fleet pressed its attack, the humans did not retreat. Their ships broke formation and charged. Lasers lit the void. Missiles streaked toward the enemy. The humans fought not with overwhelming force, but with courage and surprise. For the first time in their endless war, the Karzul met an enemy that did not surrender at the sight of them. At first, the Dominion laughed. The human fleet was small, their ships fragile. Another sacrifice, the warlord said. They will die as the others did. But the battle did not go as expected. Human ships moved unpredictably. They weaved through fire, struck from unexpected angles, and used the very wreckage of the battlefield as cover. What they lacked in numbers, they made up for in creativity. Where one ship fell, another pressed forward. Where defenses cracked, humans turned mistakes into tactics, and slowly, impossibly, the Karzul advance faltered. On the surface, the Talari looked to the skies and saw light where there had only been darkness. They heard voices on their comms, strange voices, human voices, calling out, "You are not alone, hold on. We are here." For the first time since the Dominion began its conquest, hope returned. It was not a great victory that day. Many human ships were lost. The Dominion still held the upper hand. But something had changed, something the warlord did not expect. The Karzul believed they were fighting another enemy to crush. What they did not realize was that they had awakened something far more dangerous, a species that refused to kneel, and a spirit that spread like fire. Far away, across countless stars, whispers began. The humans had fought the Dominion. The humans had dared to stand. Civilizations that had given up began to wonder. If the young ones from Earth could resist, then maybe defeat was not certain after all. The Karzul warlord, furious, ordered more ships to prepare. He would not allow this defiance to spread. He swore he would break the humans quickly before their courage infected others. But the warlord was wrong. The humans had only just begun. The Karzul Dominion had fought many wars. To them, each war was the same. Strike fast, strike hard, break the enemy's will before they even thought of fighting back. Their fleets were vast, their weapons unmatched. Every civilization that resisted had eventually fallen. That was why the humans puzzled them. The Dominion's warlord had expected the Terrans to crumble after their first battle. Instead, they had returned. Not only had they returned, but they had grown stronger. At first, the humans fought like amateurs. Their fleets were smaller, their ships less advanced. Their weapons lacked the range and power of Dominion cannons. But as the war stretched on, something strange happened. The humans began to adapt. In the Battle of Karos Belt, the Dominion surrounded a group of human ships among drifting asteroids. By all logic, the humans should have been destroyed in minutes. Instead, they turned the asteroids into weapons. Engines strapped onto rocks became ramming projectiles. Mining lasers turned into improvised cannons. The Dominion fleet was forced to retreat, embarrassed and furious. In the skirmish of Vera Station, the Dominion cut off the humans from supplies, expecting them to starve. But the humans built farms in the empty cargo bays, turning waste into soil. They recycled every drop of water, every fragment of food. When the Dominion returned weeks later expecting surrender, the humans still fought, leaner, sharper, and angrier than before. The galaxy watched in awe. The humans did not follow the rules of war. They wrote their own. For the Talari survivors on Carrion, the humans became more than rescuers. They became partners. Human engineers worked side by side with Talari builders, repairing homes, purifying oceans, and restoring life where only ashes had remained. One Talari elder, his crystal eyes glimmering with tears, said softly to a human captain, "You fight with fire, but you heal with kindness. Both are needed. Both are rare." These words spread almost as quickly as news of the battles. Humanity was not just fighting. They were protecting. And for broken civilizations across the stars, that made all the difference. But the Dominion would not allow this defiance to grow unchecked. The warlord summoned his generals. Around him, the map of the Orion Arm glowed red, each conquered world a mark of his power. Yet among the red, small blue sparks appeared, systems where humans had fought back, where hope was alive. "These sparks must be crushed," he growled. Before the fire spreads, the generals agreed. A massive fleet was gathered, larger than anything the humans had faced. Their goal was not only to defeat, but to break humanity before their defiance inspired others. The humans knew the storm was coming. On Earth, the United Terran Council met again. Some leaders spoke with fear. "We cannot win," one said. "Their fleets outnumber us 10-1. But others answered firmly. "Numbers do not decide every battle," a commander replied. "We cannot match their size, but we can match their will. We can adapt. We can endure," the council voted. Humanity would not surrender. They would prepare for the greatest fight of their history. Preparation took many forms. On Mars, pilots trained not in formation flying but in chaos drills, learning to weave, dodge, and strike unpredictably. On Luna, engineers redesigned cargo freighters into makeshift warships, arming them with railguns and missiles. On Earth, civilians gathered supplies, ready to support the fleet however they could. But most important of all, humanity did not prepare alone. The Valian scientists, once too afraid to fight, now shared their technology openly. The Larash smugglers, skilled at slipping past blockades, volunteered to carry supplies. Even the Shenkar exiles, scattered and leaderless, pledged their few remaining ships. The Dominion had wanted to isolate humanity. Instead, their threats had done the opposite. They had made humanity the heart of a growing alliance. The great test came at Feros Gate, a star system where trade routes from dozens of species once met. The Dominion had taken it months before, turning it into a fortress. Now they gathered their new fleet there, ready to launch a crushing blow against Earth. The humans knew they could not face that fleet directly. To do so would mean annihilation. So they did what they had always done. They adapted. Instead of attacking the fleet head-on, they attacked the environment. They mined the gas giants, turning storms into traps. They hid charges within the debris fields, waiting for Dominion ships to pass. They hacked old satellites and turned them into beacons of confusion, making the Dominion believe enemies lurked where none existed. When the battle began, the Dominion expected an easy hunt. Instead, they entered a maze of fire. Human ships struck and vanished, appearing where least expected. Dominion cruisers, powerful but rigid, struggled to respond. Each time they adjusted, the humans shifted again. A commander of the Dominion shouted, "They do not fight like soldiers. They fight like wild storms." And it was true. The battle raged for days. Both sides suffered heavy losses. But while the Dominion lost strength with each defeat, the humans only seemed to grow fiercer. They fought not just for survival, but for meaning. For every Talari child, for every broken world, for every voice that had once cried in vain. At last, when the Dominion withdrew from Feros Gate, the galaxy trembled with disbelief. The humans had not only survived, they had forced the Dominion to retreat. Across hidden networks, messages spread. "The humans did it," whispered a refugee. "They fought the Dominion and won. They are not just another race. They are something new." In dark corners of occupied worlds, hope lit again. The humans had turned the tide, not by power but by refusing to bow. For the Dominion warlord, the retreat was more than defeat. It was an insult. His empire had never lost to a young, untested race. Now the map of his conquest showed not only red, but cracks of blue, widening with each passing day. He swore to himself, this would not continue. He would bring the full force of the Dominion against humanity. He would burn their homeworlds until nothing remained. But deep in his heart, a seed of doubt stirred. For the first time he wondered, what if these humans truly could not be broken? On Earth, the people mourned their losses, but they also celebrated their courage. The war was far from over. In truth, it was only beginning. But for the first time in living memory, the galaxy saw the Dominion stumble, and at the center of it all stood humanity, young, untested, and underestimated. They were the spark the galaxy had been waiting for. The tide had begun to turn. The war had changed. At first, the Karzul Dominion had treated humanity as a nuisance, a defiant but weak race that would soon be broken. But the battles of Sirian, Karos Belt, and Pharos Gate had proven otherwise. The humans had not only survived, they had forced the Dominion to retreat. Across the galaxy, whispers spread like wildfire. The humans could not be crushed. The humans were different. The humans were dangerous, and the warlord of the Dominion could no longer ignore them. In the dark halls of the Dominion command fortress, the warlord stood before a massive star map. Red markers showed the systems under his rule, stretching across spiral arms like rivers of fire. Yet among the red-blue lights now flickered, small worlds where humans had fought and won, where hope dared to grow. The warlord's claws scraped across the map. Enough, he said, his voice low and sharp. This race has defied us too long. We will strike with everything. No more raids, no more skirmishes. We will end them in one final blow. The generals bowed. Orders spread. A fleet unlike any before was called together. From dozens of systems, warships gathered black and sharp as blades, until the Dominion had assembled the largest armada in its history. The warlord named it the Endless Wrath Fleet. Its goal was simple: destroy humanity completely. On Earth, news of the Dominion's preparations reached the United Terran Council. The chamber was silent as the report was read. Thousands of ships, weapons strong enough to shatter moons, all moving toward a single target. Some counselors trembled with fear. We cannot face such power. If they attack Earth, we will fall. Others argued with steady voices. Then we will not face them alone. We are not the same people we were at the beginning. We have allies now. We have strength. The vote was unanimous. Humanity would not surrender. They would stand and fight. Messages were sent across hidden channels, across refugee camps, across broken worlds. Humanity called, and the galaxy answered. The Talari sent what ships they had rebuilt, their once peaceful vessels now armed with borrowed weapons. The Vaylin shared energy technology, boosting human shields to survive longer in battle. The Larash smugglers brought supplies, food, and medicine, carrying them through dangerous routes no one else dared to fly. Even the scattered Shenkar exiles pledged their warships. Scarred but unbroken, for the first time in living memory, species that had once stood alone now stood together. In the docks of Mars, human engineers worked day and night. Old freighters became warships. Mining platforms became gun stations. Every piece of metal, every engine, every hand was used. On Luna, pilots trained endlessly. They no longer practiced rigid formations. Instead, they prepared for chaos, weaving and darting in unpredictable patterns. They had learned that survival came not from strength but from adaptability. On Earth, civilians prepared too. They gathered food, built shelters, and cared for the wounded. The war was not only fought by soldiers, it was fought by everyone, in every corner of humanity's reach. When the fleets finally gathered, it was a sight no one had imagined months before. The humans led, their ships scarred but burning with determination. Around them flew Talari vessels, graceful yet armed. Shenkar warships glowed with defiance. Larash freighters carried hidden guns. Even small civilian craft joined, ready to fight in whatever way they could. It was not the largest fleet in the galaxy. It was not the most advanced. But it was something the Dominion had never faced before. A fleet bound not by conquest, but by hope. The place of battle was chosen. The shattered moons of Telvor, a system filled with jagged rocks and broken orbits. Long ago, a great war had torn the moons apart. leaving the system a graveyard of stone and dust. It was a dangerous place to fly, filled with shifting debris fields and unstable gravity wells. The humans chose it for that very reason. Against the endless Wrath fleet, they could not win in open space, but in Telvor's chaos they could fight on their own terms. The debris would be their cover. The gravity wells would be their traps. The broken moons would be their weapons. In the command ship Soul's Resolve, Captain Arya Cade stood at the central console. Her eyes swept across the fleet displays, showing the scattered positions of Allied ships. Her crew worked with quiet focus, their faces tense but determined. "Is the field ready?" she asked. "Yes, Captain," replied her engineer. "Charges placed. Asteroids mined. Beacons prepared. Once the Dominion enters, we can begin." Cade nodded. She knew the odds. Every officer did. The Dominion outnumbered them 10-1. Victory was not promised. Survival was not promised. But surrender was unthinkable. When the Dominion arrived, the stars seemed to darken. Their fleet stretched across the system like a wall of fire, endless ships glowing with red engines. At their center, the Warlord's flagship loomed, larger than any vessel humanity had ever seen, its weapons strong enough to split planets. The Warlord's voice thundered across comms. "This is your end. You will kneel, or you will burn." Silence answered him. Then Captain Cade spoke, her voice calm, steady, carrying across every Allied channel. "We are humanity. We do not kneel. We do not surrender. Today we fight not just for ourselves, but for every world you have broken, and we will not fall quietly." The Allied fleet cheered. Across ships of every kind, voices rose in unison, and the battle began. The first wave of Dominion ships surged forward, weapons blazing. The Allied fleet scattered, weaving through the debris fields. Human ships darted like hunters, striking fast and vanishing. Shenkar warships formed shield walls, protecting the weaker vessels. Talari ships lured enemies into traps where mined asteroids exploded with deadly force. The Dominion pressed harder, confident in their numbers. But the field itself turned against them. Gravity wells pulled their ships off course. Explosive charges hidden in debris shattered their formations. Beacons created false signals, leading them into ambushes. Everywhere they turned, chaos met them. And in that chaos, humanity thrived. The battle raged for hours. The Allied fleet suffered losses. Ships burned, voices were silenced, and wreckage joined the graveyard of Telvor. But for every ship destroyed, more pressed forward. For every line broken, another was formed. The Dominion commanders shouted in frustration,
"They fight without fear!
They fight without order!" But that was humanity's strength. They fought not as machines, not as predictable formations, but as living storms. Every ship was a spark of will, every crew a heartbeat refusing to stop. At the center of the battle, the Warlord's flagship advanced. Its weapons tore through asteroids, its cannons shattered Allied ships. The Warlord sneered. "They delay the inevitable," he growled. "But they will still fall." Yet even as he spoke, his eyes narrowed. The humans were not simply delaying. They were guiding him. Slowly, carefully, without his notice, they were drawing the Dominion fleet deeper into the chaos of Telvor. Into the trap. In Soul's Resolve, Captain Cade gave the order. Now, across the system, charges detonated. Entire fields of asteroids shifted, collapsing inward. Massive rocks slammed into Dominion ships. Gravity wells were triggered, dragging vessels into collisions. The battlefield itself became a weapon. The Warlord's fleet shuddered. Dozens of ships were lost in minutes. Formations crumbled. The endless Wrath fleet was no longer a wall of fire. It was a storm breaking apart. And in that storm, humanity and its allies struck with everything they had. The war was not over. The battle was far from won. But for the first time, the Dominion faced something they had never imagined. A fleet that refused to be broken. A fleet that turned desperation into strength. A fleet bound by hope. The final gambit had begun. And the outcome would decide not only humanity's future, but the fate of the entire galaxy. The Battle of Telvor had raged for hours, and the system was a storm of fire, metal, and debris. Ships from every Allied race darted through the wreckage, striking and vanishing, while Dominion vessels struggled to maintain formation. Gravity wells dragged their massive cruisers into collisions. Explosions tore through the debris fields, scattering wreckage like deadly confetti. Yet amid the chaos, humanity and its allies pressed forward. Every human crew knew the stakes. Every Talari vessel knew the cost. Every Shenkar fighter knew that their moment of resistance was now or never. And at the heart of it all, Captain Arya Cade watched, guiding the fleet with calm, precise orders. She was exhausted, but her mind was sharp. Every ship, every maneuver, every trap was under her control. Humanity had survived countless battles before, but this was the one that would decide everything. The Dominion fleet had begun to falter. Their endless lines of ships were breaking apart under the clever traps and relentless attacks. For the first time in their history, the Karzul warlord realized he was not facing a simple rebellion. He was facing a storm of will, a force that refused to be broken no matter the odds. He roared in frustration. "Crush them! Leave none alive!" Yet even as he spoke, his massive flagship groaned under the weight of the asteroid traps. His ships collided, turned, and exploded. The systems he had once thought so secure were now his enemy's weapons. Captain Cade saw her opportunity. She called out orders with steady precision. Human fighters led groups of Dominion ships into narrow corridors of broken moons. Talari cruisers, nimble and fast, struck from the sides. Shenkar vessels formed protective shields, allowing human assault ships to push deeper. Every piece of the plan worked in harmony, as though the battlefield itself had joined humanity's side. The Dominion warlord's flagship advanced, hoping to target Sol's resolve, but the humans had anticipated him. Mines hidden among the shattered moons triggered, forcing his ship off course. Explosive charges from human freighters tore through its outer hull. For the first time, the warlord realized that victory was slipping from his claws. The Allied fleet pressed the attack relentlessly. Dominion ships that had once inspired fear now fled in confusion. The humans did not pursue blindly. They pressed just enough to keep the enemy disoriented, never overextending. Every strike was calculated, every maneuver precise. Meanwhile, the civilians in the supporting fleet worked tirelessly. Engineers repaired damaged ships mid-battle. Medics treated the wounded aboard cargo vessels, and communication officers coordinated attacks across the chaotic system. Humanity was fighting not just with weapons, but with unity, courage, and ingenuity. It was a kind of war no one had ever seen. On the surface of Telvor's shattered moons, Talari survivors watched from observation posts. Their once beautiful homeworld had been destroyed, yet hope burned in their eyes. For the first time, they felt that freedom was possible. Children huddled behind ruins, their hands clasped in prayer, and whispered, "The humans, they will not fail us." And they were right. The battle reached its peak when the warlord himself engaged Sol's resolve directly. His massive guns fired, tearing holes in the asteroid field and obliterating nearby human ships. The crew of Sol's resolve ducked, dodged, and returned fire with every weapon available. Captain Cade made a decisive call. "Target the core of the flagship," she said calmly. "We hit the engines, then the weapons. Everything depends on precision." Her team worked with astonishing coordination. Human engineers guided missile strikes through narrow corridors of debris. Shenkar gunners disabled defensive shields. Talari craft distracted the flagship, drawing fire away from the human assault ships. And then, in a single brilliant strike, the warlord's flagship shuddered, sparks flying across its hull. Its engines flared and failed. Systems went dark. The once feared warship, the symbol of the Dominion's unstoppable power, began to drift. The Dominion fleet wavered. Without the flagship's command, many ships became directionless. Some attempted retreat, only to be ensnared by the traps humanity had prepared. Others collided with each other in the tight, broken space of the moons. The humans did not celebrate yet. They pressed forward with careful caution, ensuring no opportunity for the Dominion to regroup. With relentless coordination, they struck again and again, breaking the fleet into smaller groups and scattering them across Telvor. By nightfall, the endless Wrath fleet was no longer endless. It was fragmented, its power shattered, its warlord humiliated, forced to flee the system aboard the few remaining ships. When the last Dominion vessel left, silence settled across the moons of Telvor. Smoke and debris hung in the void, evidence of the intense struggle. Allied ships limped through the wreckage, some barely functioning, but all still alive. Humanity had done the impossible. For the first time in centuries, the Karzul Dominion had been defeated. Not entirely destroyed, but humbled. Their reputation for unstoppable power had been broken, and the galaxy had watched. Across distant star systems, hidden civilizations rejoiced. Refugees who had been hiding from the Dominion stepped out of the shadows. Traders, scientists, and survivors shared the news. Humanity had turned the tide. Where the Dominion had seemed invincible, there was now hope. Even the smallest acts of courage mattered. A single human freighter that had drawn fire from the warlord's flagship saved dozens of Allied ships. Engineers who patched shields in the middle of battle ensured the survival of hundreds of lives. Civilians had aided in communication, medical care, and repairs. Every act, no matter how small, had contributed to victory. Captain Cade and her crew gathered on the bridge of Sol's Resolve, exhausted but proud. They had survived the unthinkable. They had turned despair into hope. "Do you realize what we've done?" a young lieutenant asked. "The Dominion will never forget this," Cade nodded. "Nor will the galaxy. But this is only the beginning. We've shown the universe who we are. Now it's up to everyone to remember it." The Talari, Valen, and Shenkar leaders sent messages of gratitude across the fleet. "You fought for us when we could not fight for ourselves." One Talari elder said, "You have given us more than life. You have given us hope." The Valen scientist who had first contacted humanity smiled as she watched the surviving ships. "We were afraid," she said softly, "but they have taught us courage." Even the Shenkar exiles who had once been bitter and mistrustful raised their voices in praise. The humans are more than warriors. They are leaders. In the days that followed, the galaxy began to change. Civilizations that had surrendered to the Dominion now began to rebuild. Trade routes reopened. Alliances were forged. And everywhere the story spread of the young race from Earth that had answered a desperate call, stood against an unstoppable empire, and survived. Humanity had done more than win a battle. They had changed the way the galaxy saw them. No longer were humans considered weak, naive, or insignificant. They were respected, feared, and admired. The warlord of the Dominion, once proud and untouchable, retreated into the dark edges of the galaxy. His empire remained vast, but his confidence had been shaken. He would never again underestimate humans, and the humans, for their part, did not seek vengeance. They returned to rebuilding, to healing the wounded, to protecting the innocent. They had fought not for glory, not for conquest, but because it was the right thing to do. The galaxy had called. Humanity had answered. As Captain Cade looked out across the stars from the bridge of her ship, she realized that this victory was not the end. It was a beginning of a new era, where humans and their allies could stand against oppression, where courage and hope mattered more than sheer power, and where even the smallest voice could make a difference. And somewhere deep in the stars, the Dominion fleet waited, but humanity was ready. They would face whatever came next, together, unbroken, and unyielding. Because when the galaxy cried out in despair, humanity had answered the call, and they would never stop answering.